I'm training for performance. I want to be able to move. I want to be able to move well. I want to be able to move with good technique under, high heart rate, that kind of thing. But I'm not training for anything in particular. It's like I just want to be good at every single thing that I do, man. It's just whether it be like kettlebells or power lifts or gymnastics movements. Like I just want to be good at everything.
Hey everybody, this is Rick Alexander, one of your more regular hosts here at Lionheart Radio. I wanted to thank everybody for listening and supporting the show, and I also wanted to tell you that everyone behind the scenes at Lionheart Radio has pulled together our resources, and we've created a free ebook that you can download on our website, and it's meant to break down the barriers between you and a healthy lifestyle. Now, heading into summer, I know that getting shredded is on the forefront of everybody's mind. If you look at Men's Health magazine or Women's Health or whatever, you're going to see a 6-week to summer shred, some bullshit article about a 15-minute ab routine or some other shit that isn't going to give you the secret to being healthy all year round. There's proven methods that work, and we've included all of these in this ebook, and we're going to give it to you for free because the things that you need to know to be healthy aren't complicated. We're going to break down fad diets, we're going to break down how to count macros, and even give you some exercise suggestions. Again, the ebook is free, so head to www.lionheartrad.io and download your free copy. And now, on to the show. All right, welcome back to Lionheart Radio. I'm your host, Rick Alexander, founder of Lou Aviv in San Diego, California, and today I am joined by Jay Maryniak. Jay messes with Muay Thai, kickboxing. He's run triathlons. He ran the New York City Marathon. He's a personal trainer. He does a lot of the calisthenics and bar stars type stuff that you see on social media these days. He has had his work featured in Men's Health magazine and RX Fitness. He's a type 1 diabetic, so I'm sure we'll get into all of that. And he's also been very open about his background, and he's had a very troubled past, and I think it's probably really done a lot to forge the person that you're going to hear today. So, Jay, thanks for being on, and if you want to, just kind of take us through your past and how you got to the point you are now.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of I could kind of go on for a long time with that, but to kind of condense it. Growing up as a kid, I was an athlete, pretty good athlete, and big into sports, and kind of had a little bit of a future ahead of me with that. And pretty early on in my life, I got involved with like quote unquote bad crowd, right? But I kind of was the bad crowd, and I just got into partying at a really young age, and really quickly that became the focus of my life. And by the time I was like 14, I quit all organized sports and kind of like a rebel, getting in a lot of trouble. So I started really heavily using drugs and drinking, and life just took a really bad turn. And I found myself completely incapable of holding a job, completely unemployable. I had a really dark place where I could not stop getting high. I never knew what was going to happen. Ultimately reached a place where I wanted to die, and I just didn't care if I lived or died anymore. And really dark place. And I was fortunate enough that I just kind of hit that bottom, and I just reached out for help. And I reached out to my father, and he got me into a rehab. That was November of 2005. I was 20 years old at the time. Walked into a rehab, and my life and fitness journey kind of began there. I had always been an active kid, and so when I got into rehab and got out and started getting sober, got into martial arts and started doing that. And at the time, I was doing like karate, Planet Fitness, smoking a pack and a half a day. I was that guy smoking a cigarette before I walked in the gym, and then smoking one when I got out.
Sounds like a Planet Fitness thing to do.
And yeah, it started to morph pretty early on. I'd be like point sparring with these like 14-year-old kids, and they'd be like kicking my ass and point sparring, and I was like, yeah, dude, I hate this, man. Like I just want to like punch.
Yeah.
I sought out MMA training, and I got into Brazilian Jiujitsu and Muay Thai kickboxing. And yeah, things kind of just took off from there, man. I started off just doing that. I got into teaching. I was asked to teach within about a year and a half or so. and started teaching classes, and then eventually did 2 smoker Muay Thai fights and won those. And then during the training for the Muay Thai and all that stuff, I found CrossFit and got hooked on CrossFit and started doing that. Became a CrossFit trainer. And then things just kind of unfolded from there.
So I kind of want to go back to the part where you said at a very young age you got into drinking and drugs and you kind of were the bad crowd. I'm curious about this because I wonder how people, especially because you had a bright future in sports, right? Like you were somebody that was active. I'm curious about the mindset that it kind of took for you to get from this person with a bright future to actually being the bad crowd, as you put it. Because the reason I'm curious is because I think a lot of us, we make little decisions every day. Obviously, nobody ever wakes up and they're like, I'm gonna be a crackhead today, right? Like you make all of these little decisions that snowball over time, and the next thing you know, you don't even recognize yourself. That's kind of my theory, but I kind of want to hear from you, what from your perspective, how did you kind of get down that path?
Yeah, I kind of, even though I was really active in sports and a part of me was a good kid, I always was kind of bad. Like I always always got in trouble, man, from really young age. Was always acting out, disrespecting my parents. Kind of just had that in me from a very early start. It wasn't kind of like one day I realized like, oh my God, like what happened, in the sense of like my emotions and like what I thought about every day. But I definitely reached a place where I was like, what the hell happened to me?
Right.
Like in the physical world,
Yeah, sure. And so when you kind of had that rock bottom moment and then you reached out for help, you said you reached out to your dad to kind of start getting into like a rehab facility?
Yeah. Totally. I had nowhere else to go, man. I didn't know what to do anymore. I was at that place, man. I was like living out of my car, sleeping from couch to couch. I had nothing, and that was the only thing I could think of to do. I just truly felt like I was gonna die, man. Just doing the stuff that I was doing, living the life I was living. So I thank God that I made that phone call, man, because it totally was the catalyst, man. It was the total thing that changed my life.
Yeah, for sure. So when you started on that journey of trying to kind of get to, well, the person that you are today, what was like the most challenging aspect of kind of overcoming that addiction and that old lifestyle?
I gotta say, I feel like being so young, getting sober. Like I feel like a lot of people, at least over the years, have told me that like, oh, it's got to be so difficult being so young, getting sober. And in some ways it was, but I guess the most challenging thing was, when you're 20 years old, your life is your friends, right? It's like going out, hanging out, being with your friends. So that was the most difficult thing, that all of my friends, or people that I thought were my friends, were all still getting high and drinking. So when I got out of rehab and obviously knew that I needed to change my life, that was the most difficult thing to separate from, was old places, old things, old people. And I struggled with that a lot. And with probably my first year being sober, I found myself still hanging out with old friends and putting myself in bad situations where I, could have gotten high or picked up a drink. And it took me a solid year and a half, maybe a little bit longer, to fully separate myself from that old life and kind of accept the new one. And so yeah, it was very, very hard to make that transition of like, okay, I can't do this anymore. I can't go to bars or put myself in these spots anymore. Like I need to figure out another way to enjoy my life, have fun, meet new people.
Yeah. So I'm interested in this because I think if we take a step back and we extrapolate your experience out, when people are listening to this, I think obstacles and hardship for people are relative, right? Like your obstacles were extreme, but the next person could be going through something where it's as simple as they're just in a rut in life, right? Like that's an obstacle.
Yeah.
And it's always relative to that person and their experiences. And so I'm curious about your mindset when you're going through these hardships and That's something that a lot of people they struggle with as they try to better themselves, right? It's like that quote, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Yeah.
So as people try to better themselves, this is like a very common theme. They find themselves like outgrowing the people around them. And it's super hard to like get into that next tier of friends. And you don't want to be, you don't want to be like that asshole that is acting like they're better than people.
Yeah.
So like, I'm kind of curious, like, how did you actually like kind of the mindset and then like actually physically do it? Like, how did you start separating yourself from those people and those experiences?
I think that one of the things I remember, I mean, it's been a while now. I remember
Yeah.
from the early days of getting sober in that transitional period was, I still found myself at 8, 9 months, 10 months sober, not feeling good. I think a lot of people think like, oh, if I could just put down the substance or the drink, then like my life will just be better. It's just not the case.
Yeah.
Drinking and drugging is, it's kind of like just a symptom of the problem. And, so as I went through, earlier sobriety, found myself still unhappy, still having a lot of anxiety and just not feeling good about, life still. And so it was, and I bring that up because it was me kind of hitting like another bottom and kind of realizing like, wow, like, because I truly thought that if I just put down the drink or drug, I'm just going to be better. And it just wasn't the case. And, because so it forced me to kind of like look deeper into myself and it helped me realize that, there are more problems than just the drinking and drugging. And, I just got more involved in the 12-step program that I was in. And more is like that feeling of desperation, you know,
Hmm.
and that was the kind of thing that kind of like forced me to not only want to separate myself from that old life and old friends, but that I needed to, because I'm just not happy. I'm just not happy, and I needed to make a change. So yeah, that was kind of like the thought process was like I just got to like another bottom and like felt like shit.
Yeah.
Like, man, what's the point in being sober if I'm unhappy and miserable? And that forced me to again, look deeper and try to make some changes.
Yeah, I think you highlight something like actually really important right there, which is, you said, hey, I think people think once you put the drinking or the drugs down, like your life's just going to ultimately be better. So in reality, like growth is a lifestyle, right? So even if whether it's fitness or personal or professional development, like if you want to get better in life, it's a whole entire lifestyle that's going to take that. Now, going to the gym might be a step in the right direction. Like putting the drinking and the drugs down is a step in the right direction. But ultimately, like you have to build a lifestyle around this new practice if you want it to be sustainable.
Yeah, 100%, man, without a doubt.
So so then you kind of hit this rock bottom again, and then I'm picturing your highs and your lows in your life like a heart rate monitor right now. So as you get into fitness and then I think you start CrossFit, right, as well?
Yeah, this was a little bit later on. Probably didn't start CrossFit until I was probably my mid 20s. So yeah, probably about had like 4 or 5 years sober is when I started CrossFit.
Okay. So as you do your first CrossFit competition, then you had another setback, right?
Yeah, so I'd done a couple like small competitions, like nothing big. I was not like super good at it or anything, but
Like the local throwdowns.
yeah, like local comps, and I did a couple, and I got really close to placing, and I was like, fuck, man, like I gotta win this, like I gotta win something, like I know I can, I know I'm good. And so we had an in-house competition at our gym, and a bunch of pretty good guys, man. And yeah, I trained really hard for the competition and went at it, and I friggin' won it, man. And I was super stoked, man. And at the end of the comp, I remember looking around like we're gonna do like the award ceremony. I remember looking around and I felt like I was freaking dying, man. I looked around and it seemed like all my competitors were all like recovered, and feeling good.
More than just post CrossFit
Yeah, man,
feeling.
it felt different, man. I just felt so trashed, and so whatever. I thought, I went hard, 7 workouts. I was like, yeah, okay, I should be trashed.
Sure.
So a few days go by, and the girl I'm dating at the time, I'm like, I don't feel right. Something's off here, And she's like, it's probably fine. Like, you're probably exaggerating a little bit, and like even my mom was like, yeah, you're probably exaggerating a bit, and so I kind of went along with that, although I kind of knew deep down that something was really off. And fast forward 2 weeks, I remember stepping on a scale one morning, and I lost about 15 pounds in 2 weeks. And at that time, I was urinate. I had to urinate so frequently that I could only sleep for like 15, 20 minutes at a time. And that day, I started to become disoriented. My vision started to get fuzzy and weird, and I still didn't know what was going on. I knew something was really wrong at that point, but I was still like, it can't be something that bad. It's got to be a freaking electrolyte deficiency or something.
Mm.
And finally, I have a client who's a doctor, and I kind of explain what's going on. And the guy, yeah, man, just drive yourself to the emergency room, man. You probably just need some fluids, and you'll be fine. I was like, all right, yeah, cool. Let me just do that. And drove myself to the hospital, and they they checked my blood sugars, and my blood sugars were so high that they could not even read them on a meter. And yeah, man, within like freaking felt like 10 minutes, man, they had a doctor come in, like all official and like dramatic.
Yeah.
Or like, you have type 1 diabetes, and I was like, what the fuck, man? And
The
had a
hits
moment.
just keep coming.
Yeah, I had a moment at the hospital. I was like, holy shit. I was crying, man. I was like freaking scared as hell. I was like, what is going to happen to me? I had no idea. Like, so many thoughts were running through my head. Like, oh, I'm not going to be able to work out anymore. Like, I didn't know much about type 1. A lot of people don't. And
Mm-hmm.
it was freaking crazy, man.
What was your diet like going into like around that time frame in your life? And the reason I'm asking is because I think a lot of times if you people get type 1 diabetes and it goes undiagnosed, they can potentially eat something, with a high glycemic index and die.
Yeah, I mean, I was pretty healthy at the time, especially with the competition and everything. I was pretty dialed in.
That probably saved you, truthfully.
It could have, man. Yeah, because my sugars were so high. I should have been in a coma for sure when I got to the hospital that day. So
We had a guy in my hometown. He had a birthday, and then so he had a piece of cake, but he felt like shit or whatever. The next day, he came home from school, ate a bunch of the cake when nobody was around, ended up having type 1 diabetes, and then his family found him dead.
God, man.
Yeah, it's fucking pretty crazy, but
Yeah, scary stuff.
yeah. So how has that diagnosis and figuring that whole process out, how has that kind of changed your diet? Like, how do you have to eat now?
Yeah, not too much changed as far as like my general eating habits, but a lot changes obviously when you get type 1 diabetes. You have to completely relearn your life and how you feel and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, there was a lot of trial and error. Like, when you first get it, you just have to kind of like go through it and not really know what's going to happen, and just kind of learn what foods you can eat and what you can eat and that kind of thing. So not too much change, but there are things out there that I just can't eat. I've learned that just no matter how much insulin I give myself, they just, the way they affect my body, I just cannot do it. So
Is that like, what are those things? Like high, like,
certain things, man. Like, if you're, I don't know if you've ever seen like a piece of cheesecake with that strawberry like jelly stuff.
sure.
That's on it. Yeah. So like stuff like that, like super condensed sugar, like that, legitimately like cannot eat. It'll like mess up my blood sugars for days. Yeah, certain things like that. So it's actually been kind of cool, because now I truly can measure, right? Like, actually measure foods and what effect they have on my blood sugar. So it's been cool to see, that low glycemic truly does, man. Like, it truly just does not affect your blood sugar the same way as, like, our high glycemic carbs and things of that nature. So it's been it's been kind of a cool experience in a lot of ways too. Obviously it's challenging, but it's also kind of cool to see how things really affect, and how, like, high amounts of fiber really help balance and minimize blood sugar spikes, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Has dialing your diet in like that, and I'd imagine just because it's forced you to dial it in, has it affected your performance since then, positively or negatively? Or
It's been completely positive. It's pretty crazy, man. Like, honestly, like when I tell people my story and share my story, I can truly say that diabetes has really, it's just completely changed my life in a positive way. Obviously I have my challenges and times where it's scary and it sucks, but yeah, it forced me to. I have such an understanding of my body and how I feel. I'm so aware of all that stuff. It's forced me, like you'd mentioned, to really dial in my diet a lot more than before, and understand how foods really affect me, and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, in that regard, it's changed me a lot. And I also, when I was first diagnosed, I lost all that weight. I put all that weight back on, and then I just became even stronger. I don't know if it was just because I was just sick for as long as I was and didn't know it, but yeah, once I got proper insulin in my body and all that stuff, I got stronger. I started getting PRs on all my lifts. I just felt really good. So it was blessing and a curse.
Mm. I'm curious with the way that you eat now, and being so dialed in, and because I know that you've kind of run the gamut on fitness endeavors. So like you've done the CrossFit thing, you've done the lifting thing, triathlons. Like, is there endurance versus lifting? Is there one that you find you're better positioned to do based on how you eat now?
That's a good question, man. So I haven't really dove into a lot of like running and triathlon endurance stuff since being diagnosed with diabetes.
Oh, okay. So that was kind of pre.
Yeah, that was pre-diabetes. It's definitely there's diabetics out there doing some pretty crazy distances with running and stuff like that. It gets more and more challenging to do endurance events with diabetes. So it's definitely better for me to be in a little more controlled environment, doing the lifting and all that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
so lifting, man, it can be really challenging. So diabetes is just weird. Even with some lifts, man, your blood sugars will just spike really high, and things get out of control, and it's hard to manage. The body is amazing. It's just so amazing how it adapts specifically to certain stimuluses. So like a heavy freaking deadlift, for like say 5 sets of one, could spike my blood sugar super high. But then I do like a metcon, 15-minute metcon, and it'll drop my blood sugar.
Man, that's crazy.
Yeah, so it's just wild, man, how the body just really is affected by so many different things.
Yeah, for sure. I was running a 50 miler a couple months ago, or maybe like a month ago. And I ran one of the laps, like an 8 mile loop, with this girl who was a type 1, and she had some kind of monitor on her.
Yeah, you're going to be definitely monitoring a lot, something like that. Yeah, I don't know. It could have been just a pump, or she might have had a what's called a CGM, which is a continuous glucose monitor. So some of the new technology nowadays that can actually test your blood sugar like every 2 minutes automatically.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, pretty awesome stuff, man.
I kind of want to get that.
Yeah, right. I think everyone should have one.
Yeah. So moving into the training aspect. So when we originally reached out to you, it's because you do a lot of fitness modeling and things like that. And so you have to stay relatively lean all year round, which going into summer is something that I think is on the forefront of most people's minds. So I'm curious, how do you train right now based on kind of like your life experiences and what you've done, and knowing that, being lean is essentially kind of part of your job?
Fortunately for me, I am definitely someone who's just lean naturally. I mean, obviously I'm not 7% body fat without putting in the work, but
Right.
definitely kind of a lean. I've always had like muscle,
Mm-hmm.
even as a little kid. I always had little biceps, man, and I was always kind of a little bit stocky and strong, but
A mesomorph, as they say.
yeah, so I kind of had those genetics going into it. But as far as staying really lean, I mean, ultimately, I try to find a great balance of, I mean, and obviously this is like the ideal for most people, I think, building muscle and then also burning fat and staying lean and ripped. And, right now I've kind of dove a little bit more into getting my heart rate up a little bit more. And so I've been doing a little bit more. I'll start workouts out, some strength training, maybe some advanced gymnastic movements, that kind of thing. And then I always finish things off with some kind of metabolic burner of some kind,
Like a high intensity type.
Yeah. So I like to really structure my workouts that way of just like building and then burning.
Mm.
And it's kind of simple, man. It's really not a lot of science behind it, really. It's something not rocket science. Just like, yeah, man, spend some time really building muscle, man, getting a good pump, and then spend some time freaking burning it off, man.
Yeah, for sure. So it's actually kind of cool that you bring that up because I just designed a talk I gave yesterday. I've been doing a little bit of research on what's called the neural governor, which is essentially the portion of your mind that is responsible for regulating your intensity output when you exercise. So,
wow.
Yeah. So, but here's the thing. It's crazy because the neural governor can be trained in people. So we used to think like it's almost like type 1 and type 2 muscle fibers, right? Like the fast twitch and slow twitch. We used to think that whatever you had, you just had, and that you had a propensity for one or the other. But turns out that actually they can be trained a lot to a very high applicable level. So if you train that neural governor like you are right now with that high intensity work at the end, you're actually like training your body to be able to put out more when you're lifting, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, no, yeah, I love that kind of stuff too, man.
So let's talk performance versus looks. How much, if you could maybe assign like a percentage to it, because I know you've dabbled in the CrossFit and stuff. So are you training for certain performance goals, like to increase, let's say, lifts or decrease Metcon times, or are you training like legitimately like more looks, or it's kind of a mix?
It's a little bit of a mixture. I mean, it's definitely changed. I did the CrossFit thing for a little while. Did a couple of those local comps. Ultimately, man, after doing some years of CrossFit, and I'm not bashing CrossFit by any means, because I love the sport, and I think some of it's just awesome, man. I love watching people just perform on just this incredible level. But for me personally, like I just got too many injuries, way too many injuries, and it just beat me up too much. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm at a point now where people will say that I'm a CrossFitter based on what I do, what I post on social media. I don't necessarily consider myself that anymore because I don't really do Olympic lifts. The past couple of years, I've kind of gotten away from like super heavy lifts, like trying to PR on lifts. I kind of have found that I do that long enough. My body, there's going to be some kind of injury at some point.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to, at this point, I'm training for looks. I'm training for performance. I want to be able to move. I want to be able to move well. I want to be able to move with good technique under, high heart rate, that kind of thing. But I'm not training for anything in particular. It's like I just want to be good at every single thing that I do, man. It's just whether it be like kettlebells or power lifts or gymnastics movements. Like I just want to be good at everything, which is like a big CrossFit mentality, which I think that is awesome,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, I like to do a bit of everything, man. Like I still lift heavy, but not like crazy heavy for me. And because I still like that feeling. I'm obviously not that old. Just turned 32. So, but I'm trying to train just in a safe way and try to get away from this like ego-driven, self-fulfilling prophecy. Of like
Yeah.
being a fucking monster. It's like, all right, feel good, man, and move well and still be getting in some of that stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Especially as you age, and not saying you're old. I mean, I'm 30 and I'm going through it right now. It's like you have to have a little bit more introspection through your workouts.
Yeah.
You can't just, yeah, exactly. You can't just be like, I'm going to fucking go hard today until you get a slap tear. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
But that's one of the beauties of CrossFit too. It's like people come into it because it's exciting, and it's like it's almost like you're playing another sport like you were in high school, and then from there you kind of like it opens your eyes to these gymnastics movements and all these different lifting styles, and you kind of like, you find which ones resonate with you, and you kind of drift toward what you like, and kind of get away from what you don't like. And it's actually one of the really cool things about CrossFit, I think, is it's like this crazy gateway drug to a whole different lifestyle.
Yeah, dude, I love that, man. I never heard it put that way, man. It's so true, man. And yeah, man, you know what, man? I gotta say too, man, one of the things I really like I see so much of, and I'm sure you see it, we all see it, is just like there's so much hate on CrossFit and really just like on every facet of fitness. Like there's this level of like, oh, you're doing biceps, like, oh, that's fucking stupid, man. Like,
Yeah.
you're a CrossFitter doing fucking those kipping pull-ups. And dude, I just can't. I gotta say, man, the older I get, the more experience I get in the fitness world, and I can't stand that, man. I can't stand it. Like, there's so much good in all facets, man. And yeah, I think particularly CrossFit too. And I like how you put that, of how, yeah, it's a gateway drug to all this other movement that exists. And yeah, man, I just hope people start to just like get a grip, man.
Yeah.
This hating on everything, man. Just like, man, embrace everything that's out there, man. Take a little something from here, take a little something from there, man. Enhance your training, man. Enhance your performance. Yeah, stop the hate, man.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, man. It's a weird thing that we do. And actually Joe Rogan talks about it a lot, where he's like, we have this like affinity to want to like find groups of people that are like us and like claim that group and be like, no, fuck you, you're wrong if you're not part of this way that I think. And as you like evolve through fitness, you realize like all of that dogma is such horseshit. It's like, dude, there's so many things that endurance athletes could take away from a bodybuilder, which sounds ridiculous. Yeah. But if people just open their minds to it, it's like, dude, you could grow as an athlete so much by just looking at what someone's doing that's not what you're doing and be like, how could that benefit me? Right?
Yeah, 100%, man. As far as the endurance athletes too, it's like when I ran the New York City Marathon, I decided to attack it in a fashion of like, all right, I'm gonna do a little bit of running, but I'm just gonna fucking CrossFit, and I'm gonna lift heavy and just get really, really strong. And I did that, and with only like minimal running, I think the furthest I ran was like a half marathon in training.
Mm-hmm.
I did all right, man. I finished. I had like 9-minute, negative split. Negative split like the entire run, and so it just goes to show that, yeah, man, like there's so much to be benefited. Like, yeah, like your typical endurance athlete. I've run into some Olympic runners that will say, no, man, you just run, just run. That's how you do it. And it's like, nah, you know what, man? Like if you got stronger, then like you would be better. If you maybe did some sprints in your training, like you could get better that way as well. And so yeah, man, it does. It just goes to show, man, that yeah, we can take things, man, and just get better. No matter what you're doing or what your goals are,
Yeah, I completely agree. That's like, if you were to, that's actually like your thought process, and obviously it worked for you, right? And I've had the same thought process going into marathons before, but if you look at it from a very like basic level, if you increase your strength to body ratio, every step that you have on the pavement is going to produce more force, which means your gait is going to be longer, your stride, which means you are literally going to have to take less strides to finish the same distance.
Yeah, it just makes sense to
right.
me. Yeah.
And then from the weightlifting standpoint too, I've talked about this on the show, but like weightlifters could have a much better session if they built that aerobic base.
Yeah, 100%, man.
Hey fam, I wanted to take a quick break from the show to talk to you about an experience that I had and also a product that I created out of that experience to solve a problem that I had. So for 4 years, I was an instructor at a military selection program. What that meant is that I would run and I would swim with the students, and then I would also do physical training. And I actually designed a lot of that physical training, and it was more of, CrossFit-y circuit, body weight type stuff, running, push-ups, pull-ups, sit-ups, the normal calisthenics that you would see in the military. At that same time, I was also training for CrossFit myself, which means anybody who's ever tried to compete in CrossFit knows that getting really good at all of those different disciplines takes a lot more time than it looks like from the outside, maybe. At least it looked like for me. So once I got in, I realized, okay, I had to train 2 times a day or more in order to accomplish what I wanted to accomplish. Now, what that meant is I would have to train before work, then I would go to work and I would train with the students, and then after work, I would also train again for myself for my second session of the day. And of course, I tried to line them all up so that I wasn't just getting wrecked on all fronts, but that's a difficult thing to do. So for the most part, it was just a ton of volume, and it was really hard to recover. Now, in an attempt to recover, I started realizing, okay, I have to start making up for all of these different lifestyle factors like sleep and how I eat and my nutrition and my supplements. And so supplements was one of the first things that I went to. But I realized in order to get ready for the next workout, I had to eat, I had to take supplements that I couldn't, for things like creatine that I couldn't get from the food. And then on top of that, I was tired, so I had to drink coffee so I could get my mind right for the day, for the next workout. And it was really this like nightmare scenario where I was constantly trying to take things in just in order to stay even and feel okay going into the next thing. What I started to find is all of the supplements that I was taking off this shelf were chocked full of fillers. They either had things that I didn't want in them, or it didn't have enough of what I actually wanted in it. So I started researching all of these different supplements, and I started researching what was actually in the labels, and I realized all of these different fillers are chocked full of things like gluten that make me feel like shit. They would make me feel bloated, or essentially just, you don't want to have to recover from a recovery is what I found. I have enough fucking recovering in my life just trying to work out 2 or 3 times a day. So what I started doing is started sourcing and buying all of the raw materials myself for all of the products that I found had proven studies that were not backed by supplement companies. I mean, proven results like creatine. It helps with strength, endurance, recovery, and it's very studied. Very widely studied, I should say. So I started sourcing these materials, putting them together, and then taking them myself. So that way I knew exactly what I was putting in my body, and I knew that everything I put in my body was proven to work, at least on some level. And then I started giving it out to all my friends and all of my teammates that also worked out with me. And what I started to find is that there was starting to be a really big demand for this product. Now, giving it out, I realized that got to a point where I was working out 3 times a day, working in the middle of those times, and then I would get home at night and I would have to be in my garage and I'd be making all this product. So that just got really hard. So we eventually outsourced the manufacturing, and I told people, hey, you guys are going to have to pay me for this product if you continue to want it. And that's exactly what we did. So we outsourced manufacturing, we started calling it Lionheart Refuel, and we started selling it on a much bigger scale. So what you get in that is branched chain amino acids, glutamine, creatine. These are all things that have proven to help with the physical recovery. And then for that mental acuity piece, we put caffeine, ginseng, and guarana. Not a lot, not enough to make you buzzed, but just enough to make you kind of have that alert feeling and feel good going into the next workout. So it's nothing on the level of a pre-workout, but more of just a help lift you up once a difficult workout puts you in a mental deficit. So if you guys want to check that product out, you can go to www.lionheartrefuel.com and use code RADIO so that we know you're a listener of the show, and you'll get 10% off. And I really appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to this, and now we'll get back to the show. All right, thanks. So you mentioned earlier in the show a lot of, in the icebreaker question, a lot of your training now, it's like you just kind of, sometimes you go in there and you just kind of listen, you program yourself a workout and then you listen to your body. And the reason I'm bringing this up is a lot of people follow you on social media. And sometimes when you get that, people want to know, like, they want to know the secret sauce, right? Like the secret thing that you're doing. They want to like, just give me exactly what you're doing so I can go do it, so I can look like you and I can have 1 million followers.
Right.
So, I'm curious, like, if you could, just for people that are listening, tell me, like, 'cause I think it's probably a lot for a lot of people, how much of your training is really based on just listening to your body?
Yeah, you know what, man? I think I kind of said it through our talk, man. Is that like it changes, So sometimes I still I get sucked into this like ego driven mentality of like, okay, I gotta freaking hit it, man. Like, do my warm-up stuff like that. But if I'm feeling a little bit of pain here, try to work through it, and I slip into that mentality of like, all right, just try to work through it and get through it because I have this goal in mind. And then the other times, like I'm in a little phase right now where it's like, nah, I can't do that. It's like if I'm feeling something like a pain and like, let's say a barbell back squat, like, put the bar down and find something else where there's no pain. You don't need to take it. You don't need to do 10 sets of fucking 10, back squats at 225. Like you don't need to do that anymore, unless you're training for something or you have some, goal in that regard. So, It's like I said, it's like an ebb and flow. I think as I get older, I tend to start just training safer more and more and more, and not listening to that ego that still exists within me. When it comes to training. But I got a really great question, man, from a follower the other day. I think on my post yesterday. And it talked about, and he was like, "Oh yeah, man, I love how there's no like routine, right? You just kind of do whatever, man. But like you're seeing a lot of gains." And I just thought that was just a great comment. And I responded back to him, about how important it is to still have routine, right? So people might see some of my stuff, and I'm kind of always doing something different, and think like I have no routine, I have no set routine, and it's not fully true. It's like I still go into workouts, even though I'm constantly changing things up and varying different stimulus and that kind of thing. I'm still going into it with like, okay, hitting full body, core, upper body, a push pull, a hip hinge, that kind of thing. So it's still important for people, and I think people get lost in this. I guess you want to quote unquote CrossFit mentality of like always changing things up and confusing the body, and people get lost in that sometimes and think that there is no routine, but it's still important, man, to have routine um, in your training to see gains,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so that's something that I keep in mind all the time, even though things are changing and I'm switching things up a lot. I'm like hitting, if you were to like step back from my training and look at it written down on paper, it's like, no, like from week to week to week, I'm hitting these body parts, I'm hitting full body every week, and so, yeah, I'm making gains, through changing things up, but I am routined, and I've been routined for many, many, many years,
Yeah. Yeah. I think that randomized, especially with like CrossFit, that randomized programming, it'll get you somewhere, right? Like, especially if
Yeah.
you're deconditioned. But there comes a point as your conditioning progresses, which you just hit on, which is like that linear progression you absolutely have to have, or you're going to stop making progress.
Right. Yeah.
So recently, like bar stars and a lot of these like isometric holds and stuff, they're really cool, like visually.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering, I think a lot of people like will look at you doing these things, right? Like the iron cross type things or the flagpole type holds, and they're like, man, that's really cool. How do you like, if you're giving people advice that want to like do stuff like that, how do you actually like train that kind of a thing?
Well, I'm going to be honest with you too. So a lot of that stuff, kind of went into that stuff and just like tried it. And I was able to do a bunch of stuff, maybe not with great technique, but I had a level of strength when I started kind of getting into all that gymnastics, calisthenics, flag poles, and all that kind of stuff. I had a base level of strength going into it without the right technique. So a lot of that stuff, man, like I didn't do your like basic like progression to building up to the movement. I kind of just like did them.
Okay.
Uh, and then kind of took like a backwards approach. And then I did them a lot. Then all of a sudden I had all this injury. And then I was like, okay, shit, I got to really go through these progressions to build the proper, stabilizing muscle strength and all that stuff in these movements. So I'm kind of going against my own experience. Like if I were to train someone, so I have a couple clients who are actually pretty young, like 15, 16, 17, that come and see me, and we just focus on calisthenics and gymnastics and like back levers and front levers and handstands and that kind of thing. And although my training was a little different, I take my clients through the proper progressions to get to these movements. So what's beautiful about our world now is that any one of us can go on YouTube right now and find like 10 videos on like how to progress to a human flag.
Right.
And so yeah, I mean, my advice to anyone out there: don't do what I did,
Yeah.
because you're gonna get hurt,
Right.
and your technique's gonna be shit. It's like, go back and like take the baby steps, man, because it's those things that are going to build you up to being able to do these movements properly with proper technique, but without getting hurt. So like a movement like the human flag, people have no idea, like the human flag, like one of the biggest things you need to be strong with is like your stabilizers, man, rotator cuff, like Terry's minor or major, man, like your lat strength, things that people don't think. People think like, oh, like my arms and like my core has got to be really strong to hold a human flag. And it's like, yeah, you do, but it's like, no, there's much more specific work that needs to go into that movement to build a proper strength, so you're not using other muscle that not the wrong muscle to kind of hold these movements. So yeah, there's a lot that kind of goes into it. So yeah, man, train smart, man. That's really a game, man. You gotta train smart, because we want to hopefully, have some longevity in what we're doing and be able to train, as long as we possibly can. So.
And so you post a lot of plyometric type stuff, like the explosive box jump, box jump to pistol, like that kind of a thing. Is that the same story? Do you think you kind of just like innately have that ability, or is that something you actively train a lot?
Yeah, I've gotten that question a lot too, and yeah, there's some definitely some genetics that go into that. I've always been able to jump high and that kind of thing, but I think back to when I first started doing all that kind of stuff about 4 years ago. I have an old video of me failing a box jump at like just a standing box jump at like 52 inches, and I got really pissed. I like punched the plates and like cracked my hand open. Yeah, it's really really stupid, but 52 inches, and I kept training and training and training. I think the last time I did a standing box jump, I was like 56 and a half.
That's with no step.
So, yeah, so that's through, constantly training these movements. Like, yeah, I was always able to jump high, but, in a couple of years, I'm jumping 4.5 inches higher, than I was before. So.
Right. Curious, what is your box jump if you got like a running start?
My highest running start, I think it was like 63 and a half.
Jesus. Okay.
I couldn't do it anymore, I don't think, man. I tried doing some of that stuff recently. It was like 60 inches, and then I was like, I'm going to get hurt doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no point in doing this.
Right. So we got a listener question for you. You motivate a lot of people. How do you stay motivated yourself?
Oh man, you know what? There's just something in me, man. I mean, I definitely get motivated by the constant feedback, of like people saying like, "Hey, dude, you like really inspire me, man. Like, I want to be like you." That's fucking amazing, man. I mean, who wouldn't like love to hear that,
Sure.
on a basis? And like, so yeah, that thing definitely keeps pushing me, man, for sure, and keeps me driven. But dude, I just always had this, man. I got like a fierceness about me, like in my personality, that like, and maybe it's like, that addictive piece that I have, or whatever it is, but I just have this like tremendous drive, man, to just want to be better, man, keep growing, and ultimately at this point in my life too, is to help people, man. I realized today that I have a bunch of gifts that have been given to me, man, that allow me to reach people, on a deep level, man, and inspire people. And it's to not continue to seek that and make that a point in every day of my life to try to help somebody would just be a fucking disservice to the world, So I have, things that drive me, but ultimately I just have this innate drive in myself, man, that just comes from within, I guess,
Sure. Yeah. I'm always interested in what motivates people, just because I just through coaching and through the podcast and our supplement companies and stuff. I'm always curious because I think what I'm finding is it has to be intrinsic. Those outward motivators, like, compliments or wanting to look good, like those will get you to a point for sure. Even hate, right? Like if you hit rock bottom and you hate yourself, it will get you to a point. And at some point though, that intrinsic motivation, it seems like, has to take over. That like almost that like has to switch from like hate to love, right?
Yeah, no, totally, man. You nailed it with that, for sure. It is like, yeah, all that stuff does only get you to a certain point, but ultimately it's like what's within really, really matters,
Yeah, for sure. Cool, man. So the final question is a Lionheart kicker, and we ask every guest this. So if you could give blanket advice, and this can be about fitness or it can be about life, based on all the experiences that you've had and all the things that you've done, if you could give one piece of advice and it were guaranteed to be translated to every language and everybody would hear it, what would you tell people?
Such a big question, obviously.
It is.
yeah, I don't know. I feel like the first thing that came to my mind was trying to help other people, man. And I'm in no way saying that as if like every day, every minute of my life, I'm just all about helping other people. That's not true, man. I'm self-centered in some ways, and I have my own goals and selfish goals and that kind of thing. But my life, completely changed when I got sober. And early on in sobriety, man, I realized, after having some experience of like helping other people try to get sober, and that kind of thing, that man, just life is just so much more fulfilling when I'm doing something for the world, man. Trying to help another person. So if I were to give anyone any advice, it'd be, get out of yourself as much as possible. Get out of your fucking head. Try to be as selfless as you can be, and help other people. I believe that's why we're here, man.
Yeah, sure, man. That's great. Be more helpful, be more useful as a human. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Awesome, dude. Well, hey, thanks for being on today. I really appreciate it. For people that are listening to this and want to follow along with you and support your journey, how can they do that?
Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram at JTMFit. So it's actually JTM_fit. Same thing with Facebook, and also my website, jtmfit.com. I just released the 6-week workout program, which is freaking beast. And would love for people to get out there and try it, man, and make some changes, man.
Awesome, dude. Well, we'll link all that up in the show notes of this episode. Thanks for being on today. I really appreciate it, Jay.
Rick, thanks so much, man.
All right, thanks, brother. Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening to Lionheart Radio. I hope that the information from today's show will make you fitter, happier, and healthier. For the show notes of this episode and every episode, head to www.lionheartrad.io. Yep, just like Lionheart Radio. And please, if you have the time, head over to iTunes and give us a 5-star rating. It really helps us to know that we're on the right track and delivering you reliable information and value. As always, feedback is welcomed. If you have any comments on the show or would like to suggest a guest, send me an email at rick@luavive.com. That's LUAVIVE.com. Thanks for your support, and we will see you next time.
Bitch, I feel good. Don't I look stupendous? My shine is so endless, and shit you can do to end this. Even when I'm dead, niggas still gon' bump that chip shit. Coke, white, Escalade on cinches for you dipshit. So you won't forget this. Midwest nigga be the coldest. Cleveland is